Jim.
Hey, how's it going, Don? Giving away free
This
cuddles
is
for
Ron
you
Hills
today?
from the Race Report.
Oh yes, I wanted to call him and I never got to it.
Well, he's here, and
Hi, Ron.
How you doing?
I'll give you his card.
Yeah, I meant to
Next year,
call.
let me know so I can mention this on the race report the
I
week
meant to
before.
call you and I forgot to. It was one of
Okay,
those
well,
things. In between the Strawberry Festival and running the store and running this and the Canandaigua Steam Show next week, I was a busy boy.
Well, all right. At least Jim got me down here to give you some
Yeah,
calls.
that's
So there we go. Okay, it's all yours. You're rolling.
Okay.
Okay, we're here at the Tioga County Fair, and we're talking with organizer and member of the Atlantic Coast Old Timers Vintage Race Car Club here, Mr. Jim Mead. Jim,
How you doing?
great event, and we're here to see some old-time sprint car racing, and tell us a little bit about the event that's going on here today.
Well, as you know, Atlantic Coast Old Timers welcomes early sprint cars, early midget cars, open wheel cars. And cars like this did operate at the Tioga County Fair in the 1930s, and we think in the 50s, but it was very difficult to find information about that. We know that the Fair Board advertised races in 1934, and the Village of Owego Board of Trustees and Mayor tried to bring an injunction to stop it for liability reasons, and it was brought before the state Supreme Court in Elmira, and the state Supreme Court justice found in favor of the Fair Board that they could indeed hold the auto races. And that's because of an interesting legal situation that has to do with Marvin Park and Dr. Marvin and the Pompelli family and the deed of gift to the village and the agricultural society and how it's all wired together. So that's an interesting historical fact. Now, of course, back then they were driving for life and death and $20, whereas today we're just out playing around. So these are all hippodromed races, extremely hippodromed races, and we hope to have a lot of fun.
Well, it looks like you got a good feel of cars and different styles from different eras. We've got cars from the 30s right up to full-winged sprint cars that race today. And we see that you have a hill gasser here, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about this venture.
Well, this is a body by Hiram Hilligus, and the frame was by Milt Jones from Paramus, New Jersey, and he built the frame and then bought the panels from Hiram Hilligus, which you could do. Hilligus advertised panels only or panel and frame, and these were all hand pounded out on cast steel blocks, and I just think that they're one of the prettiest sprint car designs. He probably built somewhere under 50 of them over a 40-year span. This car ran competitively from 1951 to 1955, mostly with NARA, the National Auto Racing Association. It might have early on got into the URC just before the changeover to overhead valve engines, but we're not sure of that. It shows no evidence of ever having an overhead valve engine or ever having a roll bar, let alone a cage. Sometime in the 1960s, there was an attempt to change it into a super modified, and that didn't happen, thankfully. And then it went into preservation with two different owners over the last 35 years that almost got their restoration complete, but not quite, and I was able to purchase it a year ago and complete the restoration.
So you're kind of looking forward to sliding in the seat, tightening up the belts, and taking around the half mile here at Tioga County Fairgrounds.
I did that at Afton, 3 weeks ago, and we found some things that needed to be sorted out, and we got them sorted out. But I'm really excited today because I got my friend Doug Worthing, the Junkyard Jet, to come back out of retirement, and he's actually my driver. So it's a team effort. That's one thing I noticed, even owning this silly old thing. It's always a team effort. You can't do this alone. There's a lot to it.
It's a small world, and it's a great fraternity, and racing, always has been a family-oriented thing. We kind of grew up with it. It's in your blood, and once you've been bitten by it, it's kind of hard to get away.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, yeah.
All right, well, there you have some of the lowdown on what's happening here at the Tioga County Fair as we get ready to go with the Atlantic Coast Old Timers here at the fairgrounds. Reporting for the Race Report, Jim Chase, back to you in the studio, Ron.
Which I'll edit in.
Okay.
For people that want to know more about your organization, is there a website, Facebook, whatever, that people could go to for contact
Bill,
info?
hey Bill, is it acotnews.org?
Hey, buddy.
Good, how are you?
Good. I was
Hey,
wondering
Doug.
if you was going to make it.
Good seeing you.
Okay, just for folks to collect more information about your organization here, website, Facebook page, or any of that kind of information that it can be found on.
Yeah, we have acotnews.org is the web page, and then there is a Facebook page. If you just search Atlantic Coast Old Timers, not ACOT, but Atlantic Coast Old Timers, you'll find the Facebook page as well. But the web page, which I do not think has a link to Facebook, but it does have our schedule and pictures of cars and so forth, is ACOTNEWS, acotnews.org, O-R-G.
There you have it.
Perfect.
Done?
That one, I sold that one a long time ago.
Oh.
I'm building one just like that. With a cross spring rear and everything.
A long time.
Talk about some of your sprint car racing.
That's
That's good.
all over the East Coast, I guess.
You comfortable there, Jim?
I'm good if you're good.
Okay, good enough. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, once again here at Tioga County Fair with the Atlantic Coast Old Timers, and no stranger to the racetracks around with sprint cars, Dale Pitcher. Glad to see you.
Thank you.
And we're in for a treat here today.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a nice show. They got a nice selection of cars here through the years and so on. Nice looking equipment, well kept and well preserved. Really like it. Special sport.
Kind of brings back a whole bunch of memories, doesn't it?
Well, if I was feeling a little bit better, we'd be behind one of these wheels, I think. The right foot still works.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, as many laps as that you've made around and features that you've won. I'm sure, is there any, say, a top 5 that stick out in your memory?
Well, my top one has got to be the Clock Memorial back in '98. We run the best cars in the East Coast, and some from even the Southeast came up. And we won that race in real good fashion, and it was a tribute race to one of my best friends that actually died in my pit area, and it's one that I'd never forget, and I don't think there's never a race that I ran any better. That had to have been the best one I ever run.
Favorite track? What comes to memory here as far as some of the favorite places, or maybe some of the favorite wins as well?
Well, my favorite track I think of all would be Port Royal down in Pennsylvania. And then small track would be Greenwood Valley down just outside of Bloomsburg. And my final home track, Thunder Mountain. I love Thunder Mountain. We had a lot of fun there. We won, I think, 27 feature races at Thunder, and that's a real special place for me.
Well, it's always good to get together and see old friends and talk about the old days, and this has got to be a special day here, and looking at some of this equipment, I'm sure brings a twinkle to your eye, and you know, might get that itch going again once again.
A little twinkle in the eye and a spark to the seat.
As they say.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, they say old racers never get older, they just get faster.
Well, I don't know about being faster, but Danny Dietrich and I had a chat one night on the back of my trailer back when he was running with the Outlaws, and I told him that I was giving it up and I was retiring. And Danny says, well, be careful. He says they've got halfway houses for drug problems and alcohol problems, but they ain't got nothing for us old racers. You'll be back.
Yeah, it's hard. Once you've started, it's kind of hard to get out there. But this has been a great treat for me to have you here today and chat with you. And hope you enjoy the day and enjoy some of the vintage cars that are here with the Atlantic Coast Old Timers.
They're great guys. They got a great group, and we're going to be around at least to see the rest of this show anyway.
All right, with Dale Pitcher from the Tioga County Fairgrounds, back to you in the studio, Ron.
Okay, and once again, can I get you to throw in one more question?
Sure.
Who's the toughest guy you ever had to stare down in a race car?
Need a minute to think about this one?
Well, I got to think about the toughest competitor was Dave Porchek.
Okay.
Because he come from late models, and he was really good, really strong.
Don't put it in a question for him.
Okay. Okay, so final question. Some of the toughest competitors that you've had to stare in the face and rise to the challenge, who comes to your mind?
Well, one of the best was Dave Porchek. Dave and I ran together. We were friends. He come out of late model racing and come over and ran with us with the sprints and so on. And Dave was really, really talented. And another guy on the equal line would have been my teammate and partner, Rob Howell, from down in Milton, Pennsylvania. The three of us were so close that, we were right on one another whenever we were racing. But there was a lot of respect and just great times, great part of life that you just never forget.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you for your time, and it's been a great pleasure. Shake my hand, and we'll see you at the track.
Yeah, we'll be there.
All righty, back to you, Ron.
And if you'll just hold that right up about 3 inches. Yeah, right up like that.
Okay.
And just so I have it right, give me your first and last name again.
Okay, Eddie Roberts.
Roberts, R-O-B-E-R-T-S?
Right.
Okay. Eddie, it's certainly an honor to meet somebody that raced at Shangri-La Speedway as early as 1947. Can you share some of your memories from back then?
Well, I hauled my own race car on a homemade trailer behind a Hudson 6-cylinder all the way down from Rochester, and came down, stayed overnight because it was more than a one-day haul. Stayed in the old hotel in Owego. They always had a room for me. Used to park our cars on the trailer right on the main street of Owego, and nobody worried about anything.
Who were some of the drivers that you raced against back then?
Oh, Harry Eckert, of course, and the Booley brothers, and Kenny Gallup, and I can tell you this. And I'm racking my brain. They don't come that easy anymore. I'm 89 years old, and the memory is not what it used to be.
Tell us about the first race car you can remember driving.
The first race car I drove was a midget,
I'm just going to move that right about there.
and then I bought my own sprint car and rebuilt it and brought it down to Shangri-La. And when I was at Shangri-La with my own car, it was the first sprint car I had ever driven. And I managed to keep up, but there was no way I was going to win with a car like that. But had a lot of fun over the years.
Did you travel the fair circuits like many of the racers did in those days?
Some of them I raced at the Altamont Fair near Albany, and a few others it's hard to remember anymore. We raced at Sydney, New York. The old track there is probably gone. That was dusty and dirt, and it had some holes in it, but we still got around and had a race. I spun out there. Kenny Gallup rode on the back of the car when they towed it back to the pits. Kenny lived in Albany, and he and his wife Millie and me and my wife got to be good friends over the years.
Now, what was your favorite racetrack?
I like Shangri-La. I really like Shangri-La. It was a nice track. And in midgets, I like Buffalo Stadium.
Is there any one race or that stands out in your mind, either a big win or something special about the race?
Not at Shangri-La, because I never did very well there, except, well, I did drive for Carl Seacules, the number 5. There's a picture of that in the book about Buffalo Stadium. But I did win a race at Buffalo Stadium in a midget, and it's my claim to fame. I beat Johnny Coy, who was the hot shot from Connecticut.
Well, obviously you still love racing. You're here
Oh, yeah.
with the
Yeah.
Atlantic Coast Old Timers. If you had a chance, would you be hopping in one of these cars?
Well, I had a chance 4 years ago at Loudon, New Hampshire. They let me take a midget around there, even though I was in my 80s, and I loved every minute of it.
You've seen a lot of changes in the sport over the years. Was
Have
it
I
more
ever?
fun back then, or is it more fun now?
It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot cheaper back then. The investment now is almost prohibitive.
Okay. How about some of the danger? I know some of the guys didn't even wear seat belts back then.
Well, I always wore a seat belt, but we didn't have much in the way of roll bars in the beginning. Roll bars came later, and then cages came after that, of course.
Okay. Well, that's great. Just so I have us, would you give me your address in Rochester so I can get a hold of you later?
Sure thing. It's Eddie Roberts, 950 Long Pond Road, Rochester, New York, 14626.
And your phone number?
Area 585-225-6342.
There we go. We got audio. Okay, it's all yours.
All right, my name's Alan Tatich. I own this vintage sprint car here, number 55. It was originally built by George Littell out of Binghamton, New York for the 1936 season. It was a home-built car with a Ford frame. It's a 32 Ford Model B engine in it. Has a Winfield flathead on it, 2 Winfield carburetors, 32 Ford front axle, Model A rear axle, Franklin steering. It's kind of the mechanicals of it, but it's all hand-built by George. Over here on the side of the cowl, you can see the badges from when it raced in the 1930s and 1940s. There's a 1938 badge, 1939, 1940, 41. Give you an idea how old this is. And what's kind of really neat is this is the original paint on it from the 1930s. I've known about it since I was 15 years old. Purchased it approximately 15 years ago, and I have gray hair now, to give you an idea how long that's been. But it's a really cool car. George was quite a craftsman. And I guess the one thing of note was the very first time it was used on May 9th, 1939, the driver did get killed in it at the Afton Fairgrounds. It's just a neat old car.
What kind of engine was in it originally?
The original engine in it was when it was first built, it was a Ford Flathead V8 for 1936. When he rebuilt it after being crashed, he put a 32 Ford Model B four-cylinder in it with a Miller overhead cam head on it, with 2 Winfield carburetors, and I know where the original engine is. I'm trying to negotiate purchasing that from its current owner to reinstall it into it. And, well, like I said, it's a pretty neat car. That's in the infield at Shangri-La. Here's the trees. Remember those big trees that used to be there? Here he is working on it. There's the midget and sprint car. I have the midget too. I have both of them.
That it was, because I've got that footage from.
Let me call.
Take your time. Whenever. Tell us about some of the tracks that you know at racetrack.
Okay. Let me get a drink of water. Hold on.
Yep, no hurry. Good. There we are.
Okay. Hi, not bad. How are you?
Good. Okay, let's talk about some of the racetracks that she's been at.
Well, the number 55 behind me, it raced at Afton, New York, Campville Speedway in Campville, New York, the Kirkwood Half Mile in Kirkwood, New York, the original Shangri-La Speedway in Owego. In addition, Altamont, Reading, Syracuse. All total, this car competed at 7 different states in its career. It's, quite a storied history behind it.
Can you name some of the drivers that drove it?
Some of the drivers in it were Harry Sense, Johnny Carpenter. Let me think, who else? Harry Sense and Carpenter drove it a lot. Well, George Littell drove it. Also, George's wife Mabel drove it in 1936. And yeah, we one time asked George how many drivers drove it and so on, and he said he had a lot of good drivers and it was at a lot of tracks. So this is what we've pieced together from looking at old National Auto Racing newses and talking to people and so on.
Any idea what track it had the most success at?
Probably the most success was at the Kirkwood half mile there, and also up to Altamont. I know we got a second place at both facilities.
Awesome. Great.
This picture board is the Tioga County Fairgrounds, the facility we're currently at. In 1936, here's a few photos of the cars that competed here. Top left photo is Lou Hornbrook from Ithaca. Mike Felbar from Syracuse is in the number 10. And the number 18 and number 16 down at the bottom were the DeLaylis brothers out of Seneca Falls.
I never heard of the Southern Tier Racing Club before.
That was the predecessor to the Northeast Racing Club. I don't know why I'm coughing. These next photos are from the Southern Tier Racing Club, which was formed in the mid-1930s in Johnson City, New York. And they competed at Campville, Kirkwood, Afton, also at Shangri-La.
Now you mentioned Johnson City. Well, the Lester brothers were or the Schaefer brothers were from Johnson City. Both raced sprint cars. Les and
Right here is Les Schaefer.
and his brother's name was Bert Schaefer.
That is correct. Number 6 is Bert Schaefer, and then number 5 down there, bottom left.
That's interesting. See, I live on Floral Avenue, same house I grew up in.
Okay, yeah.
On my way to school every day, Schaefer's garage was at the corner of Burbank and Floral Avenue, and they'd have sprint cars in the garage all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Bert's Lunch, which is later became Bert's Bar,
Okay.
was a few blocks away on Grand Avenue, and that was, I wish I knew what happened to all their photographs. That place was lined with nothing but photographs, every wall of the restaurant.
Wow.
And,
This is opening day at Shangri-La.
okay, so this is that video that I just,
Right. My parents were there and took these photos from the stands.
do you have any of these digitized, or are they all?
Nah, just like this.